Hey guys, and welcome to another update for the procedural city generator. Really good progress this past week. I'm sure if you've been keeping up with the super short videos that I've been posting, I've made really good progress with the procedural road generation. That's been my focus. If you remember from the last big video, I talked about the general workflow that I had in mind for creating the city, right? And out of all those things, two things were missing. Auto road generation, which in the previous video I had to do manually with MRT, and that can be really time consuming, especially if you have a massive city, right? And the other one was prop spawning, right? I already have all of the buildings, the different zones. I have foliage, even though the foliage has been improved slightly. But today I want to focus obviously on the procedural road generation that you've been seeing, and actually some really big updates, believe it or not, since the last teaser video that I gave you guys. So I don't want to ramble on too long, but let's just give you a quick preview of what I have. So what you can see here is three different zones. I've incorporated two new concepts. I have here, if you look on the outliner here, I have a volume called city limits. And basically all of the generated roads will respect that limit, right? So if you have a massive map and you want your city to be a specific size, you can enclose it in this volume and the roads will not go outside of this volume, right? So that's a way for you to have control over the size of your city. And then I have another concept called the density zone. And this is it's called density zone because in one of the papers that I read, they referred to it as a density zone. But you could think about this as the center of the city where there's the most obviously population density, or if you have like little settlements in your game, those would be the markers where your city would be, right? The main settlements. And the concept here is that if you look in the real world, all of the big cities or settlements or density zones, like I'm naming them here, are actually connected by a road of highways, right? So those are the big highways, like in the US, I-40, for example. And then around the density zone, the city center and the highways, then you have all of the normal roads. So what I did is I created a separate class of roads. If you look here on the road manager, I have now buttons for different kinds of roads. So I will have now highways that will actually connect the density zones automatically. And then inside those density zones and city limits, then you'll have things like the main roads, the minor roads, the rural roads, etc., that will organically grow from those cities. So the setup here is I have three separate cities with density zones kind of in the middle. And then you can see each city has a slightly different configuration for commercial, residential, and what is the other one? Industrial zones. So I purposely did that so the layout of the city would be different. So the first thing we do, and this is obviously, as you can see, a much bigger map, way bigger, right, than the previous maps that I've shown. So if I go now to Road Manager, the first thing I'll do is I'll get the zones and I'll generate the highways. And you'll see that automatically, let me just go into game mode. There are now highways that have been created between the density zones, connecting all of the cities. So you can see here and here. I know it's really hard in game mode because of the coloring, but you can see at least here on the splines that now all of the cities are naturally connected by this big highway or this path. And then from there, I can go ahead and create the main roads. And the main roads are created again from the same density zone, connecting to the highway, but respecting the city limits. So effectively what you're doing is you're creating three different cities, separate cities, that are connected by a network of highways. I'm going to create, let's see if I can create a few more roads, main roads. There you go, you can see. And they're both in organic, and I'll show you why in a second here. So obviously these are completely random. If I don't like for example, let's see, one more. No. If I don't like this pattern, I can remove just the main roads and leave the highways and then try again for the main roads. And these are again generated at random. So to make sure that we don't go too long, I'm going to just leave this pattern, but you can see here the main rows are now at a different color and they're slightly smaller. And then after you do that, later on I will implement minor rows, which are going to be kind of like the regular 2-lane rows and even rule roads, to create a very vast network of roads. And from there I can go to the city generator, get all of the new roads that have been created, and then I can click on spawn buildings. And as you can see here, I'm just gonna go up, you can see that I actually have 3 separate cities. And if I zoom in here, these are full-blown cities. As you can see, you have all of the buildings that are spawned all around the rows through commercial, and then you have industrial here, and then you have residential here. So 3 full cities, and they're all connected via highways. So you can see performance is really bad because I have a lot of buildings here. So I'm going to turn the buildings into instant static meshes. And now it's a lot better, but now they are calling, as you can see. But what I did want to show besides that is that I've vastly improved the spawning algorithm, which is really cool. In the last video, when you use the organic template for the roads, the buildings were kind of messed up, right? They were spawning on top of the roads. So I did a second pass on the algorithm, and you can see now that even when the roads are very curvy, all of the buildings are spawning correctly. So in this case, for example, only this little building was being able to fit there. So that's what the algorithm is doing, right? So now, no matter, and look in this case, there's like a little split here, and you can see that the houses are now nicely organized. So far I've been battle testing it. I haven't seen any big issues. So far everything seems to be spawning correctly. And yeah, this is, like I said, a big city now with 2 different types of roads. I'm gonna maximize here. Oops. Just so you can see, it is a massive map, and I am stuck at 120 frames per second. My pawn is I made him super fast and able to make ridiculous jumps just so I could traverse the cities. But again, these are, like I said, full-blown cities based on the procedurally generated roads, as you can see. Again, full interiors, everything I've shown you before, but now we have, oops, massive cities. So in just a few clicks, I've created 3 massive cities. I'm going to go out of game mode so you can see them here. And all of them are spawned differently. So big update. Now in your game you have like a big open world game. You are now free to make different settlements. It doesn't have to be massive cities. If you're making like a I don't know, Skyrim type game, you can make small settlements with the same concept of density zones, and then you can automatically have them connected in the map, and these will automatically terraform the terrain for you, guaranteeing that they're actually walkable. And then the next thing you can do is spawn foliage, right? Same process. I'm gonna go to the city generator, spawn foliage, and I'm gonna make the foliage instant static meshes again. And I don't remember exactly what settings I used, but not all of the zones have foliage. You see, in this case, only this zone had foliage, so I have to go back. But yeah, this is really the biggest update here. Now you can connect different cities and different layouts. I'm really happy with the way the algorithm is working. I have to implement more variety for minor roads and rural roads. Ideally, even in between these main roads, you would have like a grid. Usually cities have like the minor roads. These are really where the residential houses are more grid-like. So ideally you would have like a more organic highways and major roads, and then you have more grid-like minor roads, and that's really where all the houses are, at least here in the US. If you're somewhere else in Europe, then maybe that's a little bit different. Another cool thing I did want to show is that now you have the ability to select which roads the spawner can use per zone. And I know that's kind of a mouthful. Basically, I'm trying to figure out here how much flexibility can I give you, right? So sometimes you'll see on major highways that there aren't any houses, right? If this is a major highway, for example, right? This is the highway connecting these two cities. Usually, you're not gonna have houses around the highway, right? That usually doesn't happen, or at least not like that. So what you can do is you can click now on any zone, and there's a list at the bottom called road list, and you can select what types of roads will contain buildings, right? So in this case, for this entire zone, I'm saying I don't want you to spawn anything on highways, right? And I'm gonna do the same thing for this industrial zone here, and I'm gonna take out the highway, right? And I'm gonna keep my view right here so you can see it. And I'm going to now go up to my city generator, and I'm going to remove all buildings. And I'm going to, again, spawn buildings. It's going to take a while here. There's a lot. And now you can see that no buildings were spawned for these two zones on the highway, right? But they were spawned here on the commercial because I have highway selected for commercial, but here no highway, right? So that's an extra layer of control, right? You can now select on a per zone basis what types of roads will have buildings. And this will be even more and more complex and flexible when I add minor and rural roads, which is kind of the next thing. And you truly will have a lot of flexibility, right? In here, you'll have houses spawned here on the highway because, again, I have that setting. So, yeah. What do you guys think? Really excited on the... Just turn them into hierarchical and static meshes. I'm really excited at the progress so far. There's still a lot of problems that I foresee. You know, little bugs here and there, but the main I guess the base is there, which to me is really the difficult part, right? Once I figured out how to get these rows laid out in some kind of natural pattern, which I have, then the rest of the stuff is just polish and you know, just minor little bugs here and there, but the basics are there. So yeah, I wanted to give you another quick preview here, so let me go ahead and save this map. Two other things, since I have you here, really quickly. This is really the most exciting thing, but I wanted to show you something else. I did make some improvements to the spawner. Let's see. Landscape auto test. I think it's test 3. Let me see. Sorry guys, doing this on the fly. Yeah. So this is kind of the map that I used for that video. Still here, right? And if you remember, I used a foliage spawner, right? So I'm gonna grab this foliage spawner here, and I'm gonna move it. Oops, that's the zone. I'm looking at the spawner, foliage spawner here. And let me show you something that I've added. So I'm going to make this, I don't know, 1,000 by 1,000. Nope, maybe 500 here. Fine. I don't need it to be that big. And I can define the foliage that will spawn. And in this case, I have two types of foliage. I have the pines and I have the bushes, right? And you'll notice that I have a setting here called max slope to spawn. And this is basically the slope. What is the maximum slope where this foliage will actually spawn, right? And right now it's 0.4, and this is 0.4 for both. So if I do this, let's just try to spawn 1,000 trees, and I say spawn foliage, you'll see that the trees only spawn on the more flat areas. See, these areas here don't have any trees because again the slope is too high. So if I want to remove the foliage, oops, oh, that's exactly why. So let me just, it's a little bug here. I'm gonna go ahead and, let's see, 238.69. Sorry, it's a little bug here. Spawn, remove, there you go. So now I'm going to try to spawn 5,000 trees, right? And I do the same thing, spawn. And again, you'll see that it doesn't really matter the foliage density, it'll still respect the slope. And that's really cool because you can make this massive, right? And spawn thousands and thousands of trees that spawn in a logical place in your map. If I go ahead and remove this, the other cool thing is that this slope is on a per foliage basis. So I can say the bush, I want the bush to spawn, doesn't really matter. One is like the most extreme, right? You can spawn on any slope, but the pines will only spawn on the 0.4, right? And if I go here and I click spawn foliage, if I zoom in, you'll see now that the bushes here are spawning pretty much everywhere, but the trees are only spawning where the slope is less, right? And if I want to take this a step further, I can say for the bushes, I want you to align to the surface, and I can spawn them. And now the bushes, whoops, are aligned to the surface, but the trees are straight. So again, really small detail, but I don't know, to me that small detail makes all the difference, right? Because now as you're making, I'm thinking like, you know, you're making big cities in landscapes, you want the auto generated roads to sculpt the landscape, right? So you don't have to do that, that's in. You want the cities to automatically sculpt the landscape as well, that's in. And you want your foliage to have some semblance of logic when you're spawning it. So that's also in. And the last thing I'll show, and this video is going a little too long now, but really quickly, and this is still a little buggy. Whoops, not this one, but this one. No, street level. Sorry, too many maps. I'm trying to find the right one here. Here it is. I have some props that I've started spawning on the street. And you can see here, these are street lights. So I found some of these assets in one of Epic's free projects. And I am now experimenting in spawning props. So I'm going to remove all the props. You can see now that not only do you have spawn buildings, make buildings, instance messages, spawn foliage, make them instanced, and now you have the same thing for spawn props. And if I click on spawn props, you can see here, obviously I have the trace as a debug. It's not fully working. You can see this tree is still not working properly. But the point is that it's a work in progress, and I kind of want to give you the little scoop here. And I do have big plans for this. So there's going to be some fixed, you can see here and there, there's going to be some fixed props like street lights. Then you're going to be very deterministic and say, I want these props to be at a specific distance, X amount of distance, consistently. And you can say whether they're left or right. But I also have plans to make random props that are going to be, you know, you can give them like a % chance to spawn. Maybe like a trash can or a bus stop, or maybe even a parked car, right? You can select anything, right? It's just a static mesh to spawn. And the same deal, right now I don't have that, so you can see they're individual actors, but same deal, you'll be able to then press a button and turn them into instant static meshes. So with that, you know, once this system is implemented, I think I will have all of the major systems that I wanted implemented in one way or another. Now there's still a lot of work to be done, but I like to try to create everything at a base level to see how everything interacts, and then you can polish and improve. So really, really excited. I hope you guys are liking where this is going. So yeah, please do let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like the direction? Is there anything specific that you think I should consider when doing road generation? Is the concept of density zones and automatically connecting the zones something that you find useful? What about the props? Anything specific as far as spawning props that you think I should be aware of? Any rules or logic? I'd love to hear it, because this is the time to give me some suggestions. So thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you in the next video.